I wasn't giving him his flowers like I should have in the last episode. I had Jean Claude, and I love Jean Claude, man. I'm a Jean Claude stan, but what he has against him is that he doesn't have a series.
Happened in the 90s.
I just want to get into what's been really grinding my gears since the last time we talked last week. I think it was at the beginning of last week's show. We went through just sort of like top 5 action stars of the 90s. And I don't know if you remember, it was like Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, Brucey Willis, and Michael Jai White for me. And the whole week, and before I get into it, I just want to say I hate when I am put on the spot for that kind of list because inevitably, I mean, that's your job. But you think of things that you should have put in there. And I, over the week, was examining what I said, and I still stick by 90% of what I said, but there's a huge asterisk and something I feel like I got to slap my goddamn self in the face for, which is, the last spot I gave to Michael Jai White, and that's out of love of the person himself. He's a badass. But I realized, Steve, that I had overlooked another celebrity, also black, that I think should be named before Michael Jai White, and that would be one Mr. Wesley Snipes. And I want to apologize to the man. Maybe you could argue he's not as legendary or this or that, but I think he needs to be put into the top 5, Steve. Wesley Snipes.
Okay.
New Jack City. Sugar Hill. I mean, I don't know if you'd even call those action movies, but he's shooting a gun in them. So
there
you can say
action in it.
There's that. Demolition Man. I mean, he was getting Blade, if you want to throw him in there. He even made comic book movies popular in the 90s. And, other things that he did that we always love, like White Men Can't Jump and stuff. But it was eating me up.
Action in that.
I was sitting by myself all week like, I can't believe I didn't Wesley, as if he's going to watch and be like, man, fuck these guys. They didn't even mention me in the top 5. But I feel like, even if it's just for my own peace of mind, I got to say it. So there you go, Steve.
And he was in The Fan with Robert De Niro.
Yeah. Kind of weird, but still, I dug that movie. It's a good movie. It's got a lot of style, even though it's kind of just a dumb story.
Passenger 57.
Boom. I was trying to think of the plane one. I was like, I know I'm missing a bunch. He was in, I believe, the sequel to, was that him? To the Harrison Ford movie where he's running from the cops. The Fugitive. I think U.S. Marshals. I think he was in that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And the Money Train, I don't know. That.
Come on. It's good. I like that. The guy lighting people on fire, just, for the fuck of it. I love that shit.
I think J-Lo was in that, or was it?
I think you're right. I think that was one of her first, roles.
Yeah, him and Woody again, man.
It's a fucking combination. They need to bring it back.
For real, bro.
Get him in again.
I really thought they were going to be the next, Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder combo after White Man Can't Jump, and then they did Money Train. And then, just life happened to both of them, man. And now they're just in 2 different worlds where I don't know if that's even going to be possible anymore. And I hate that for both of them.
I do too, but I do think there's room for them to get back in a movie together. I think people would love that. I think people would go see that, if only for the nostalgia. But Woody, this dude's a weed legend now. He's got a weed store in LA that I hear is some sort of weed Graceland where it's got a tropical vibe. It's got a lounge that you can hang out at. And if nothing else, Woody and Wesley need to get in the weed business. WWW, Steve.
I love it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And I want to apologize to Bruce Willis. I wasn't giving him his flowers like I should have in the last episode. I had Jean Claude, and I love Jean Claude, man. I'm a Jean Claude stan. But what he has against him is that he doesn't have a series. Just off this alone, and I had to be reminded watching this, man. I watched it twice over the week. And just off this alone, we're going to take out Pulp Fiction. We're going to take out all the other stuff, man. just all this alone, bro. Yeah, you got to be top 5. You got to be.
He kept going too, but yeah, the Die Hard trilogy in the '90s. I know they kept going with it, going dipping into that well, but the three that they got out, they're all good. I
Yeah.
honestly, Steve, I conflated the villain in this. I remembered the villain from the third one, who I believe is related to one of the villains in the first one, the guy that he kills, like the Swedish dude.
Yeah.
So I totally basically forgot about Die Hard 2, and shame on me because we're going to get to it. But I applaud you giving him his flowers because the man is just he's an every man's hero, Steve.
He really is. He has
You
that
know,
everyday man or everyman quality because he's not like yoked like Arnold and Sylvester. He looks like I don't know even know how tall Bruce Willie is, man. He might be below 6 foot.
he's. I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say he is because most celebrities are.
Yeah.
You know, so but yeah, dude, it's like just a bus driver that can just whoop ass. You know, he's just a badass, dude.
Or a janitor, that really cool janitor that
Whatever.
just happens to know how to fight.
Yeah, you know, he's got a cool tattoo, but he's something happened back in the day that he's a janitor. Maybe this, but yeah, he does, and he'll bring like some pizzazz to it. You know, he looks good. I mean, sometimes there's some like humor into his line reads. Like there's some of that. There's some finesse there a little bit. Same thing with Stallone. But I mean, Bruce Willis will give you some comedy, Steve. He'll give you a little moonlighting on top of punching a guy in the throat, you know?
He has that over Sly and Arnold, but like he's not an impressionable person. Like I think that makes you more iconic when people can do impressions of you.
Yeah.
What's Bruce's thing? You can't do it.
You
His
just
voice
kind of have
isn't,
to sound cool, like let's go out for some drinks. It's almost
you know,
Matthew McConaughey-ish when it comes
or
out of my mouth. I
or
don't
Luke
like that.
Perry. It's like a mix.
It's just like cool
Yeah.
guy because he's always just kind of like slow talking. Hey man, hey, what's up, little fat fuck? I like how, dude. We'll get into it. I'm so excited to talk about Die Hard too. But shout out Bruce Willis, man. I know he's having some issues health
Yeah.
wise, but the guy is cemented as a straight up. He's one of the last movie stars. I mean, the people that we have, those are the last ones, Steve, because there's nobody like this now. Even the ones that you could name, like Momoa or Chris Hemsworth, just because they're in comic book movies. You know what I
Statham.
mean?
Still got Statham.
I guess, but I wouldn't even put him in this kind of class, Steve. He's like a
Yeah.
B grade compared.
Yeah.
He only has one. I guess it's like Stallone and everybody else. He has one fucking. He's got one pitch. If he was a pitcher,
Man.
he'd just have a fastball. You know.
But just like Bruce Willie, just off the transporter alone, come on, give Statham his prop. Transporter go hard in the paint.
Yeah, the first. I mean, dude, I love me some Statham. I love him in when he was doing all the Guy Ritchie movies. You know, where he
Yeah.
just played sort of that cool, calm, and collected guy that can handle himself. But I love. He's almost like this generation's Jean Claude Van Damme, but he gives you that English accent that you love. That real like, oh, I'm gonna fucking punch you in the fucking throat, mate. Like one of those just raspy voice dudes, you know? I feel like he's from Manchester or something. Maybe not. I don't know.
The part where you don't sound like a pussy.
Yeah. Like Bob Hoskins, like that, where it's like bulldog English, where it just sounds growly when it comes out. He's not like, oh, me bum hurts,
Yeah.
like typical Brit stuff. But
It's
I'll give him his props, but I'm just saying you can't put the people who became famous in action movies in the early 2000s to even like a Van Damme. It's just not there,
facts.
Steve.
Big facts.
Thank you. That's my fucking hot take, Steve. Excuse my French, but don't be trying to denigrate these 90s action stars because we're getting to the point where it's been a long time since the heyday. I know it seems like pretty quick to us, not that long ago, but there's people that don't even know who Bruce Willis is other than maybe the guy from the Hold 9 Yards. I don't know.
Hey, boys and girls, this is Steve G and Mad G with Happened in the 90s, a show where we talk about what happened in the 90s. So get out your Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and your Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, and let me tell you about this girl. Maybe I should. I met her in Philly, and my name is Brown Sugar. Yeah, we be making love constantly. That's why my eyes are the shade of blood burgundy. The way I brown sugar, baby. And get high off of love, don't know how to behave. Oh, want some of your brown sugar. If it was Adam Sandler, it'd be want some of the brown sugar.
But I mean, Steve, those silky smooth. I hit too much weed, Steve. Everything you're saying is just hilarious.
If the lyrics aren't jacked up, it's not happening in the 90s, damn it.
I mean, I like the songs you sing because all you can get like it's like 90% gibberish, but then you'll be like, "Well, I am a brown sugar." And you just get the right two words. I like that.
Well, today, my friend, we're talking about the 4th of July
Wow.
in the 90s. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Starting off in 1990, Die Hard 2 or Die Harder premieres in theaters. John McClane attempts to avert disaster as rogue military operatives seize control of Dulles International Airport in Washington, D.C. Directed by Rennie Harlan, starring Bruce Willis, Bonnie Badella, William Atherton, Reginald VelJohnson, Franco Nero, William Sandler, and John Amos. That's 2 black sitcom dads I just named.
Yeah. Amos, dude, I'll be honest with you. He had me fooled for a second because, like I said, I forgot about this. But I don't know, Steve. Is this better than the first one? I don't think so. I mean, I don't think you can really do that. But I think it sticks right up there with it.
There are very few. I don't think this is on that list of sequels that just outshine the original, man. Terminator 2, that's my first go-to.
Empire
Rocky,
Strikes Back. I'll say that. If you're
okay.
into Star Wars, but yeah, Terminator 2. That's a motherfucker. It doesn't get better than that. It actually was way better than the first.
You could say that's the goat of sequels, man. This one, I don't want to shit on this one because this one holds up. It actually exceeded expectations.
Hell yeah.
They quadrupled their investment in this movie, man.
Well, what I do like about this as a sequel is that it relies on the epicness of the first one. John McClane's a legend. People know who he is because of what he did in the first one. I mean, he's acknowledged. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're the guy with the Nakatomi Tower thing, man. You are a bad dude." Everyone knows who he is. So I like that, where it's just they don't really do much explaining. They just assume you've seen the first one and everybody's referencing it, so you just know this guy's a badass. I mean, really, what John McClane is almost like a Batman figure, where he just has vision. He's in an airport. Everyone else is minding their own business. He's like, hey, that guy looks shady. Okay. He looks like a terrorist. And then boom, we're in a movie and it's, you are as in the dark as John McClane this whole movie. And I like that because it does fool you a couple times.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a stupid person, but it had me a couple of times, Steve.
Well, I mean, this isn't the first time either of us has watched this, man. But even still, like the suspense, there's a proper amount of buildup, and I mean, we'll touch on those points later, man. But like, there's a couple moments where like some shit is about to hit the fan on John McClane, but like just at the last second, and still to this day, I'm at the edge of my seat, man.
He's got spider sense for bullets, Steve. He just knows what's going on. He can almost smell crime, to reference It's Always Sunny a little bit. But right away, we get a nice little, still a Christmas movie. It's happening during Christmas, so we all love that. John McClane goes to Dulles. What we see in this movie is an accurate representation of that airport. I have to use that airport a lot because it's near my family. It sucks. It used to suck way worse, so I can only assume it was that much worse in the 90s. And within Steve, not a second of being parked and just waiting for his wife Holly, John McClane gets towed, Steve. I mean, it's insane. They have him up on bricks, and I don't even think he had 5 seconds to acknowledge what was going on here.
And there are character actors throughout this movie, and the guy that's towing his car, I've seen him. The first thing I think of it was he was the deli owner, the deli manager in Fresh Prince of Bel Air when he was mocking Will when he came back to Philly, and he named one of the chicken sandwiches after Will. It's like, oh, it's a give me a Will Smith on rye. Walk, 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 walk. That's random shit, just random shit.
I'm trying to figure out. I was ever since I watched it, I was like, where do I know that guy from? Because there's a movie I used to watch a lot. It might be what you're talking about, but there's something that
You
he
know him
was
from
in.
something. You just can't tell. You probably know him from several things.
He definitely played a mobster in something like that for kids, even. You know, it's like that level of stuff. But
Blank check.
uh, I, I'm sitting here trying to
Yeah.
think.
He wasn't the
Um,
main guy though. No.
no, he wasn't. But I'll think of it. I'll figure it out before the end of the show. But you know, other than John McClane, they really get your attention. You know, with that the little comedy you get there, and then we get a quick cut to just a guy doing naked karate in a hotel, and that's our villain, Steve. And the first thing we get is just heavy ass shots of this guy just doing some nice, I guess, tai chi. I don't know.
William Sandler. Yeah, man, working on his karate and kareze. And in the background, you overhear this broadcast, like the news is reporting on this guy, this Esperanza guy, and how he's being extradited out of his country. He's coming to America, and they're actually expecting his arrival at Dulles International Airport.
Why publicize that? You know, if it's hard enough to get some, this guy's like a Bolivian drug. He's like basically Noriega. Like, think
Yeah.
that kind of person. So we know there's a drug lord flying into Dulles. John McClane's wife, Holly, is flying into Dulles. Um, get a couple of fun references to 90s technology because John McClane's really anti tech, but it's the 90s, Steve. So he gets a call from her on an airplane phone,
Yeah.
and he's, you know, like, but he's coming around. You know, he has to use a fax machine at one point in this movie, and I guess that's against his morals as a troglodyte or whatever you call Luddite, whatever that's called.
I think that's what we are, by the way.
Maybe I don't know, but um, there's a lot going on, you know. So now we see this Sattler guy. I guess we don't need to go like point for point in this, but I will say this: the colonel who's basically the bad guy with the Bolivian drug lord, the guy doing naked karate. His name's
Stewart.
Colonel Stewart,
Yeah.
and he's got like a team, an A team of like CIA spies or something, and basically what they do is they reroute all power and communication from the actual Dulles air traffic control tower to a church close by, and they basically set up their own air traffic control tower and to take over. So they control everything. They shut the lights off at the airport. Nobody can land. This creates a bunch of issues because there's planes circling and running out of gas this whole movie, including John McClane's wife. But the terrorists, I got to say, Steve, fantastic plan. I wasn't even aware because there's points in this where they start changing clips of their guns from with like blue tape and red tape, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, what is going on here? Are they trying to frame another cop? But we'll get to it. But like the terrorists, they got a great plan. The only thing they didn't plan for is that John McClane, legendary badass, was going to be at this airport the same day they decided to take over the airport in order to allow the drug lord to land and get away. That's basically the whole plan of that's the plot for the terrorists.
And John McClane actually passes Colonel Stewart before any of the shit goes down, man. And one of them says, like, you look very familiar. I also want to call attention to this crew. It's more character actors, more faces that you may know, but you don't know the name. Vonnie Curtis Hall, he's the one of the main culprits. He's the black guy. I always thought he had a frog mouth. And Dion Cole, I don't know if you're a fan of him, But I never forget one of his lines where he's like, "Man, I just don't trust a black man without facial hair." And Vonnie Curtis Hall, get a mustache, man, so you won't be Frogmouth. And then there's Robert Patrick, the famous villain from Terminator 2, also Bowling Green alumni. A Ziggy
That's
Zoom
so
Bob.
cool. I love that. That's crazy.
Hell yeah. And we don't see him yet. I haven't seen him yet, but John Liggs, he's in the mix too.
The pest himself, John Lake. I the whole time because it's like I don't even know if he has a line. They give him a name in the credits as Burke, but it's a blink and you miss it. John Lake Leguizamo.
Yeah.
I mean, he's basically an extra.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen until I think that's the only time. There might be two appearances where he shows up later in the movie.
But also, those are the bad guys, Steve. We get a couple of good guys that cracked me up. One, there's an air traffic control like main dude, the boss. And I believe that guy is the same guy from that movie Walking Tall, where it's just a dude beating the shit out of people with a 2x4, Hacksaw Jim Duggan style. The Rock did a
Okay.
reboot of it. That guy's great. He's in a bunch of stuff. I think he was in a show called Mitchum too. That was hilarious, or some kind of movie. But he was like a '60s dad bod action dude, something like that. And then we get Dennis Franz, Mr. Chicago accent himself. God damn it, McClane. God
Lorenzo.
damn it.
Yeah, and I had to look him up, just like, where is he from? Because this has Midwest, Northern Midwest, Upper Peninsula all over it. Sure enough, he's from like Mayfield, Illinois.
Oh, he's from
Lorenzo,
he's
come on,
from he's from Chicago, Steve.
the
That's
Bears.
Baker's dozen, Steve. Yeah, Dennis Franz. I think he was in NYPD Blue. He was
Yeah,
one of the main dudes. I before I looked it up, I was like, I think that's Fat Man from Jake and the Fat.
come on.
But Dennis Franz is hilarious in this because he's just basically ball busting John McClane. He's like, get at it. This is my fucking airport, McClane. Because
Yeah,
he's like the head cop of the airport, even though he's obviously from Chicago. So I guess he got transferred in. But it's their relationship's hilarious. McClane's constantly calling him a fat ass, which I love. I love the 90s, just like blatant insults, just the low blows McClane throws at all these dumbasses, Steve, because he's on the know. These other people, they're just chuds.
he's always, a step ahead of others, man. And so Stewart's crew, they find this church that's offsite, just like a little bit away from the airport. And the overseer of the church, he lets them in because they tell him that, hey, we're here to work on your power supply. I think that was the
Cool.
ruse. He's like, and
Yeah.
he's just like, all right, no questions asked, whatever. And not too long after he lets him in, he's like, I feel like a piece of this church is dying with me. Well, it's funny that you say that.
I mean,
Blinking.
in a church, Steve, they
Yeah.
blow this dude up right on the pews. And then they just set up shop. Like I said, they have all the equipment. It's pretty quick, and they turn it in from like just a dilapidated church that some guys hanging out in to what looks like the Power Rangers lair with all the consoles and blinking lights and shit.
They did this in little to no time. Are all these guys former production assistants? Like the striking of like there was no pew when they cut back and it's in full operation. There were no pews in sight. Like you couldn't even tell that was a church.
And I love the panic in the air traffic. They're like, I got no systems, boss. Like, we got nothing. They got that black guy running around doing everything. I was like, isn't there anyone else that's an expert too that can assist this guy? Because he's putting in miles, Steve.
And he's a little guy, man. You just gonna have them little like nub legs just running around the airport. Come on,
Hey
guys.
guys.
He always his real name is Art Evans, but he's always like the little black guy that talks like this.
I gotta reroute the data into the jammer signals. It's like, okay, whatever, man. So John McClane early on gets to the airport. He's having a whole lot of issues with just like people being dicks to him. He's not getting the respect that John McClane deserves, other than from like maybe just somebody like a reporter that sees him. But he crosses paths early with the villain. which is hilarious. And then just as he's milling about in this airport waiting for his wife, he starts noticing like henchmen for the terrorists that really aren't doing anything really that suspicious. They're just walking around like sort of touching their ears. And he's like, I don't like that, you know?
And he's smoking cigarettes in the airport. I forgot those were the times.
This movie, if any, this is what makes me want to have cigarettes so bad, more than seeing people smoke cigarettes still, Steve, because you knew me, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
My nickname used to be cigarettes to some people because I smoke so much. And it's only when I see just a nice thick drag in a movie where somebody, it just looks so satisfying,
In
you
public
know?
at that.
Yeah, just in an airport, just walking around. I mean, he's talking to people and just like lighting up just in front of them, no questions asked. As if now you'd have to be like, "Is this okay, guys? I understand if not." But I mean, McClane, he might as well be like, it could be a doctor's office. Screw it, Steve.
And another like reoccurring character throughout this is Sam Coleman. She's like the local news reporter, and she actually spots Colonel Stewart too. She walks by him and his crew, and she's just like, "Hey, Colonel Stewart, do you have any words?" Yeah, I got two. Fuck and you.
Stone
He,
Cold Steve Austin's her ass. He even flips her the bird, Steve.
yeah, William Sadler. He has the look for this role, man. He nailed this. He has the villainous, just ice cold demeanor throughout this whole film, man. Like I don't
Killing
get
it in the 90s. We don't realize he's another guy. You don't realize everything he's done, but he did this. And he did a little movie I keep talking about, Steve. He was the main character in Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight with Billy Zane as the villain.
your
Killed
boy.
that. Yeah. He played Breaker in that. Killed that. And I'm looking at his 90s resume here, Steve.
It's
He was
illustrious.
in I mean, he was in a lot of things that we liked. He was Death in Bill and Ted,
Wow.
the guy in the white makeup. He was in Hard to Kill. He was in that show Dear John, Steve. Dear John.
Dun,
So
dun, dun,
he was
dun.
in Murphy Brown. We could keep going. He was in Roseanne. This guy was living his best life in the 90s. And in this, I like seeing it. Oh, he was also in a little movie called Shawshank Redemption as well.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so this guy
Yeah.
was killing it, and he's a good villain. Like he could do either or, but in this, he's just a fucking cold-blooded psycho, Steve. But military trained. All his dudes are all military, and he's got a couple of tricks up his sleeve that you're not even thinking of. That I think he came up with in that hotel room.
Wow.
You know, he's doing that sack karate where you can almost see it from behind, and
Word to
he,
David Carradine.
dude, yeah, exactly. Luckily, he didn't have a belt. So this whole thing starts, right? The terrorists take over the airport. They take over the air traffic control. They let the everyone at Dulles know what's going on, and they're like, "Look, you call anybody, you fuck with us. It's the simple ransom, like this is what we want. You're gonna let this guy land. You're gonna not fuck with it. Nobody's gonna go near the plane, and then you're gonna let him leave. And if you don't, we're gonna crash some planes, and we're gonna do some damage." And they are very capable of doing that, Steve.
And John McClane, he has a little shootout. That's the first like action scene that we get, and it's like two of Stewart's guys, and one of them is Bonnie Curtis Hall. The other guy gets decapitated.
I mean, I guess you could call it that. He gets his head smashed like a
Yeah.
grape. Um, and that's just all in a day's work for John McClane, right then and there. And here's another thing I love about these Die Hard movies that I don't know why I forgot about it, but it's always a great thing. The accumulation of damage through the movie. John McClane never wipes himself off. He never gets cleaned up. So at the beginning, pristine. He's got a nice little J.C. Penney sweater on. He's looking very handsome. And as this movie progresses, he starts getting dealt some damage and blood starts pouring out of him. And at the end of the movie, he's just basically like an ECW match walking around, bloody as hell. He kills those guys, which basically alerts the cops that he was in fact right. Because him and Dennis Franz are like, going against each other. He's like, look, dude, there's some shit going on. You guys need to cordon off this area. This is an investigation. And Dennis Franz is like, hey, I'm the fucking top cop here, McClane. Why don't you go have a cigarette outside or
Have a
something?
kolache with bratwurst.
Have a
But
sausage.
But it's not until after John McClane shows him the fingerprints, because him and Trudeau, neither Dennis Franz or Trudeau, the air traffic controller manager, or whatever you call him, they don't believe him. But then he produces those fingerprints that he received from the legendary Carl Winslow, aka Reginald Vell
Yeah.
Johnson.
He took some
And
prints off a dead guy, right? Faxed them over to Carl Winslow, who's in LA, just having some Twinkies, enjoying his best life. Winslow gets a fax with the prints, and they find out that these prints actually belong to a guy who's dead. He was dead, Steve. And McClane's like, "Yeah, I know. I see it right here." The guy's like, "No, you don't understand. This guy's been dead for 3 years, according to these documents." So McClane's dealing with some sort of like deep state operatives that aren't even on the map. They're off grid.
yeah, he died in 88 from a helicopter accident, apparently. So now Trudeau, he sees some truth in this. It's like, at first I didn't believe this guy, but like, hold up, Dennis Franz. Slow your roll, Carmine, Lorenzo Carmine.
God damn it, McClane. I got a damn dead stiff over here. He's pissed, but yeah, and here's where I started getting tricked, because you see Trudeau like sort of side-eyeing everybody, and I was like, this motherfucker's in on it too. Did I forget this plot point? Like, it keeps you guessing, and I think that's part of the genius of this movie.
And now back to Stewart's crew, who's taken over fully in this church. They have all their devices set up, all the lasers, everything is just going. And they just cut the system off at the airport. Like, these guys are geniuses. Like, were they a part of the Mensa crew?
The guy they're playing 4D chess. They shut off everything, which again debilitates all the plane's ability to land. There's no runways. It's just dark. And to add to the difficulty and dangerousness, there's a blizzard happening also in DC. So there's a bunch of snow and stuff. So now the airport's dead. Now the terrorists they've told Dulles what's going on. They're threatening them, and at a certain point, I feel like McClane even gets on the radio and says something to him. And I don't know whether that was the initiating factor, or I think maybe just having cops come investigate something was. But they are like, look, dude, we told you guys, no cops, nothing. We want nobody to know what's going on. So here's a lesson for you. And basically what they do is, because they have control of like an air traffic control tower, they recalibrate what ground level is. So they set that to 200 feet below what it actually is and tell one plane to land. Like, you're clear, here's the coordinates, recalibrate, and that plane comes down. McClane realizes what's going on, rushes to do something. He
gets help from the janitor, Marvin. Like, he sneaks up on him, and he was like, dude, I thought you were about to mess up my record player. But he gets the assistance of Marvin. He has a map, and it's all laid out, and then he lets him know where the skywalk is, so that he can get to this control room. Now, Leslie Barnes, he decides to try to use an unfinished antenna that he knows of to communicate with the stranded circling planes, because that was a part of the plan too. Stewart basically had the airplanes stay in the air, even though they're low on fuel, because it's like, hey, our main objective is to get Esperanza here safe, and we want an isolated 747. We see any cop, all this shit is a go.
Yeah. And so they make a plane crash, Steve. And McClane he gets up, he somehow gets like right in front of a plane in the runway, like through some ground tunnel, tries to wave like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park and just let him know what's going on. He can't. This plane crashes and they kill everybody on this plane. So these terrorists are not fucking around. McClane takes this terribly. he's in the cop room. Everyone's trying to deal with this tragedy and what's going on. He's having a cigarette, tearing up, talking about how he failed all these people. And I'm like, kind of being a little tough on yourself, man. Like you did everything you could, so feel good about that. But
Considering this is outside your jurisdiction, I mean, yeah, you're kind of a vigilante at this point. You can only
I
do
mean,
so much.
Dennis Franz, the top cop at the airport's fucking pissed off at you. So I mean, he's threatening to lock him up. He hasn't because obviously he's an asset. So that's happened. But now McClane's fucking pissed because he's like, well, you know what? I'm gonna get some revenge on that. And he also finds out that his wife's plane has about an hour and a half left to
Well,
until it runs out of gas. So there's like a ticking clock in his head for the love of his life and all this terrorism shit going on.
and now that Trudeau is on McClane's side, he sees them kind of just like moping about losing the plane and blowing up. He tells them like, "Hey, this is what we're going to do now. We're going to get the government involved. We're going to bring in the special forces unit." And speaking of the wife, another side story is that there's a reporter, like a local news reporter, on the plane with Holly, and his name is Richard Thornburg, and he's kind of an asshole. We see it like soon, like quick, that the stewardesses, they don't like him. I guess he did a story on air flight attendants calling them hoes or something like that. And he's doing his due diligence and to try to figure out what the hell is going on with this plane. So one of his assistants has like a receiver, and he intercepts what is being said from the air traffic control.
The fake one,
The fake
right?
one. Yeah.
No, it is the real one because he's hearing the panic of them being because they're communicating in some different way. But we'll get to that.
I think he hears both eventually. He hears the
Yeah,
real one and the fake one.
but he's a cock. He's like a guy. He's like a dude that would chase ambulances for a story. Like he has no morals. And I think the reason that John McClane's wife hates him is that he did a story about their kids because John McClane's like sort of a mini celebrity in this universe or something. So
Right.
she's constantly shitting on him, talking about him being a scumbag, hanging out with some old lady on the plane, and she's aware also something's going on because they're not landing and they keep looking out the window. There's like 40 planes out here just circling. This is crazy. What's going on? So, cut back to the airport. They figure out that guy that you were talking about, that's like the nerdy black dude and everything. He figures out that they can go on a different signal. Or no, I think this is where they want to go to that other array that's in the sky, like near the skywalk, and actually like bring their system back on by turning that on. So almost like the end of Jurassic Park where they have to flip all those switches. The black dude's like, look, if you can get me there, I think I can get it so that we can communicate with everybody and we'll be back on board. And we can cut them out because this is its own thing. And John McClane escorts him there. Nobody else is helping. Or no, they do take other people, now that I think about it. They have like a squadron of like airport cops
Their own
going with
crew.
them. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they go to this place, but the evil dude already thought about this. He's got some dudes disguised
Stewart.
as painters, I think.
Yeah, Stewart's
Doing
crew.
Yeah, and they're sitting there waiting for anybody to come near this area because they knew that somebody was going to come here because that radar thing was there. So as they're approaching, Stewart's crew kills everybody that you don't know their name, leaving only John McClane and this black dude alive. John McClane takes out T-1000, takes out a couple other guys, and dispatches of them. The last guy he takes out, I thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
He gets like kind of crunched and stuck by scaffolding near one of those like airport walkways that's like a flat escalator. A guy gets on that and his gun jams, and McClane has no weapon. So the guy's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you with my bare hands.
Kick your ass.
He turns on the walkway, gets a gun to get close to him, and blows this guy up. 4D chess, Steve. This guy's the ultimate badass.
He's always a step above the rest, man. John fucking McClane. Yippee-ki-yay, damn it.
But
And
but I was just gonna say, they dispatch all these henchmen. They're getting towards that array, but the Colonel Stewart's like, nah, and he just blows that bitch up. So that plan's done.
In the special forces, they arrive now, and like we said, John Amos, he's like ahead of that crew. Leslie Barnes, he takes over the control tower, and Dick, he's hearing all this stuff through the receiver. Now, while that's going on, Esperanza, his flight shows up on the scope, and now Stewart's crew, they can spot that. And Esperanza, as they're landing, he strangles the handler that was in the pit with him. Then he shoots both the pilots in the head.
You had one job, guy in the plane area with the dude. Just don't fuck with him. He's like, hey, can you give me a light? It's like, no, fuck you. I'm just going to sit over here because I've seen this before. If I do that, I'm going to get strangled to death and everything's going to be fucked up. And that's what happens, Steve.
That is what happens. And in the process of him trying to take over as the pilot now, there's like holes in the window. I thought that like once there's holes in a window of an airplane in the air, like it's immediate crash. That's what I thought.
Well, it depends how high you are because they lose pressure. So if he was way up, I mean, he might have just been sucked out of the plane or it would have like blown up like you said. But I think he was low enough that, you know, he's just sitting there like he has a broken windshield in his Chevy Datsun trying to land this thing in a snowstorm. But Stewart's on it. They get him to land the plane. So now Esperanza's on the ground. Half the plan's already, it's happened. But McClane, Steve, he's always there. He's like one of those football players that's always around the ball. If there's some fuck shit happening, McClane's right there because as soon as Esperanza's on the ground, he's like, oh, thank God. I'm here. I'm Esperanza. He opens the door. McClane's just like, da-da-da-da, and just starts, he blasts him. I mean, he gets him right away, Steve.
But Stewart and his crew, they eventually get the upper hand, man. And then like they think they're about to blow him up in the plane, John McClane. And once again, playing 5D chess, he looks to his left, he looks to his right, and boom, there's a parachute escape plan.
Yeah. Ejection seat for the pilot. And this was the money shot for this movie and the previews because
I love this.
They throw like 10 grenades in, which for some reason these grenades take like 30 seconds to blow up. I don't get that part of it, but it gives him enough time to get in this ejection seat. He ejects, the plane blows up and sends him like he's like surfing the edge of a fireball. It looks like some sort of a theme park ride, but he gets up to the pinnacle. He's like, ah! And I love John McClane too because there's like almost like some humility and when he like does this stuff because he's like, oh fuck, and he's like trying to get the parachute to come out and stuff, but he does it, Steve. And they realize like Stewart should realize at this point like maybe you should just give up because this guy's not. You can't kill him. He's a unicorn.
And like right as they see him in the parachute, is that where Grant's crew, John Amos's crew, shows up?
Yeah, and they put on a show, Steve. They're like this overwhelming force of special forces guys. You can tell because they have berets, and so they start blasting. Stewart gets away with Esperanza. They get McClane, and at first we're like, "Oh, this John Amos guy, he's pretty cool." Like, and he's even given McClane props and shitting on Dennis Franz. He's like, "Man, shut up, you fucking fat turd."
Yeah, you're my kind of guy, McClane. Yeah. You're a badass like me.
And so now McClane thinks he's got a squad, right? They're trying to figure stuff out. People are doing sideways glances. You can't tell who's in, who's out, who's good, who's bad. So they're trying to figure out what to do next. And as this is happening, that plane situation, again, like there's that ticking clock of that keep going on. McClane only has so much time. You know, he's got to stop terrorism, but he's got to get his wife on the ground too, Steve. So that's his ultimate concern.
And McClane, his plan right now is to find that church. He finds the church and he's ambushed by one of Stewart's guys. But as they're having a little tussle in the snow, he ends up stabbing dude in the eye with an icicle. That's the most violent use of an icicle I think I've ever seen.
Right in the fucking eyeballs, Steve. And even the guy was like, "Oh," and then he died. It was disgusting, though. I didn't like that.
I don't even think they did that in that Clay Fighters video game back in the day, where one of the fighting characters was a snowman. You remember that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I've seen this on is that weird movie called Jack Frost. That was like a horror movie with the snowman. Definitely happened in that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other Christmas movies where it happens too, like horror movie wise. But I mean, straight he takes a stab too, Steve. He
Like
takes that like slow stab, but that pisses him off. He doesn't like to have his own blood drawn, and he does that, and it's disgusting. I didn't like that.
blood just makes him angrier.
I don't like when shit goes in people's eyes in movies or they fuck with teeth. You know, I don't like
Yeah.
that. It fucks with my. It just gives me chills.
It's the
So
equivalent of a screeching chalkboard.
yeah. So Franz is out here with John Amos watching, and they approach this church, surround it, and they start blasting at the church. Right? They're just fucking thousands of bullets are flying.
But Stewart's crew, they're sharing gunfire too.
Yeah, it does. It's crazy. It should be a lot more damage done, but these guys, it looks real. Let's just put it like that. They get away. I don't remember exactly. I think at this point, Stewart's group retreats.
They leave on snowmobiles, and I
Yeah,
think
that's what it
John
was.
McClane, yeah, he has his own snowmobile, and he goes after him, and so does John Amos Grant's crew. They go after him, and then so like, but in the process, as John McClane is chasing after Stewart's crew, his snowmobile gets jacked up, and he flies about as high as he did in that parachute.
I mean, and he literally at the last second, because he like X Games jumps this thing. Some guy fucking hits it with like 10 bullets. It explodes, but he's just like, and pushes it away. Gets fucked up in the process. More cuts, more damage to John McClane. Um, and Stewart and his men get away because McClane's lost his vehicle. And I think it's at this point we now realize that John Amos and his little group of soldiers are actually fake ass soldiers that are with Colonel Stewart. They're in on it, Steve.
Damn, damn, damn.
And how they do this is kind of what I talked about it earlier. These guys, all these guys on the bad squad have two different clips. One has blue tape on it, and those are blanks, and one has red tape because those are the ones that are going to kill people. So McClane's the only one that realizes this. He goes back to to Dulles, I think, gets in Dennis Franz's face, is like, look, idiot, these people are in on it too. And Dennis Franz is like, listen, McClane, I'm sick of this shit. Have a sausage and just go sit down. And McClane's like, oh, okay. Just unloads. But it's one of those clips with blanks. And he's like, look, dude, they played us.
Yeah.
These guys are putting on a show, so let's go get them. So now he's got Franz on his side too, Steve. Franz is coming over. He realizes he's been a cock.
Finally. And while that's going on, Holly's been keeping an eye on Dick Thurnberg because he's been moving funny, and she already had a restraining order against dude. I slipped over that one, man. And what Dick Thurnberg is doing, he's basically doing a live broadcast from the lavatory of the airplane. I swear technology must have been better in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean the phone technology for sure was, but he's given this live report, and now because the cops have been keeping this all sort of under wraps, because they don't want to have mass panic. So now the reporter's putting this shit on air, and in Dulles, it's pandemonium. Everyone thinks they're in the middle of a terrorist attack, so they start trampling people to get out of there. Holly realizes that this guy's perpetrating some BS, and security definitely wasn't as good in the 90s, Steve, because the old lady she's been sitting with has a little tase action that she's just carrying on for her own little protection. She showed it like at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Holly takes that taser, opens the bathroom door, and just tases dude in the neck. And he gets incapacitated in the funniest of ways, Steve. It's like a planking. I think his eyes are even still open.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a dark old lady. Like she even mentioned that she tased her dog. Said he was limping for over a week. How dare you?
Look at my little peacemaker, honey. Ain't nobody touching this cooter. It was weird too because it's like this is a nightmare. You're sitting around somebody in a plane. They're like, Hey, you want to see some crazy shit?
PETA,
Bitch.
are you hearing this?
Yeah. But so she stops the report, right? But the damage is already done. Dulles is in shambles. These terrorists have gotten away. McClane's, you don't know what's going on,
No.
right? But that black dude that keeps coming in handy, he's like, look, these guys have to be someplace close, right? That guy he was in this building, so he can't be that far away. And they start looking and they realize that the only logical place, and they figure all that stuff out, right? But as they I feel like when he gets back to the airport, what they realize now is like that guy's in a hangar getting that Esperanza guy ready to escape on another plane,
Yeah,
right?
because basically what happened was once Dick put that broadcast out, that caused panic because that was
Yeah.
broadcast through the local news, and like with all that panic, it started a diversion tactic in an inadvertent way. It was like a diversion tactic so that like McClane and the crew like they can't get to the hangar. It
Yeah.
makes it harder for them, man. And so while that's going on, Grant's crew and Stewart's crew, they're able to make a clean escape, well, semi-clean escape, or at least meet in the hangar and aboard the 747.
Man, and they're celebrating way too early, Steve. Everyone's like, man, we did it. Esperanza's the only one that's like, let's just chill until we get out of here. You know, and he even tells John Amos, like, hey, man, shut the fuck up till we get in the air. All right.
Yeah.
Because I might be a Pablo esque dude, but I still got to get this plane off the ground. So they're popping bottles, doing all the pre flight checks that you got to do. Because the only person who can fly this plane, all this military expertise, Steve, but the only guy who can fly the fucking plane is the drug lord.
Esperanza, he's a man of several hats.
He used to work at Boeing, but he had to decide instead the Coke was just too profitable. So they're doing that. McClane initiates a little help from his boy, Mr. Greasy Marvin, the janitor. Because what Marvin basically is the guy who knows how to get through the airport, like in all the greasy areas. He's like, where's the garbage chute that'll get me here? Where's the
Yeah.
this and that? So Marvin or somebody gets him, like, what happens? Oh, that's what happens. McClane sees the news crew with the lady that he saw at the beginning. And he's
Sam,
like, look, you guys got a helicopter, right? And they get in a helicopter. They go to the hangar that Esperanza is. And as this plane is coming out on the runway to take off, the helicopter's there. And McClane's like to the guy flying the helicopter, the news guy, he's like, hey, man, get in front of him, stop him. And the news guy's like, hey, man, I got kid. I'm not doing
dude,
that.
I'm not
Fucking
about to play
crazy.
chicken with a 200-ton plane. Like that's not happening on my watch, bro. Or at least all right, get above them. Get above them, then, pussy. All right. So he gets above them, and then John McClane, ever so daring, hops on the wing of the 747. Yippee ki yay, motherfucker!
No, I mean, I like that. Really, the only he's just annoyed by this guy. He's like, all right, dude, just get over the wing. I'll jump on the wing. Like, it's nothing. Like, I mean, there's no second thoughts. He gets
So
on the
daring.
wing and puts his jacket into one of the flaps on the wing, so it basically prevents the plane from taking off. Esperanza's like, something is crazy right now. Look over there on the wing, and naked karate Stewart and one of his boys get out on the plane wing. Now, here's the one thing, Steve. You'd be like, open the door, shoot McClane. It's easy, right? They
No
can't
brainer.
do that because there's gas in the wing. And I'm not a plane mechanic, but I guess that makes sense because that's where the actual engines are. So there's a
Yeah.
shitload of jet fuel there. So now it's hand to hand time on a moving plane wing, and
Yeah.
McClane gets in it. So first he gets in with the one henchman, the nameless guy, the red shirt guy. He mixes it up, gets real fucked up, but flips a guy over, and that guy gets pulled into the engine. Obviously, we all knew that was coming,
Well,
right?
that's Grant, right? That's James Evans Sr., right? That he throws into the jet engine. Grant.
Is it?
Yeah, because they get into a fist fight and they're going at it for a while. And then Grant, like he's hanging on, but eventually, like McClane just throws him off, man, and then he like gets sucked in.
Yeah, blood goes everywhere. Now it's down to Colonel Stewart and him, and we've seen Colonel Stewart do things naked that these same techniques can be applied with clothes on. So he gets in and he starts fucking McClane up, Steve. He's getting all the reverses. If this is Mortal Kombat, he's getting a flawless victory, right?
He's Johnny Cage in this motherfucker.
He's hitting this dude up, but he flips McClane over. McClane, you think, oh, he's going into the engine. But conveniently, Steve, as McClane's falling down the wing, we see that there's just this gas release valve right there. So McClane dings that as he's getting like pushed off of the wing. So Colonel Stewart's like, oh, we're good to go. He's off. McClane
Bye.
rolls to a stop on the runway, but there's this huge valve of gas just leaving a line, Steve, of jet fuel to the engine.
But
Stewart takes
McClane,
that little thing, his jacket off of the flap, goes back inside and is like, Esperanza, where the Cuban cigars at, bitches?
we the shit. We the shit. Yeah, we the shit. But McClane conveniently has a lighter on him. That's why it's always good. If you don't smoke, people have a lighter on you. You just in case. You never know when you're going to get thrown off a 747 and save your wife in her arrival.
And I mean, Steve, he already has the catchphrase. He doesn't have to think about it. He lights that some bitch, goes yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, and lights it. And that trail of fire, Steve, starts going towards the plane. The plane is getting close to taking off. It finally starts taking off, but right as it's leaving the ground, Steve, that fucking flame goes into the engine, and everyone's like, yeah! And then, boom, explosion. All the bad guys, just in one, McClane's death count in this, all the bad guys, every last
Pest,
one of them.
Frogmouth.
He killed T-1000 in 5 seconds. It took Arnold Schwarzenegger 2.5 hours to do that.
Yeah.
And what also this does is conveniently creates a situation where all the other planes can land because now they have a clear runway. This is basically created a light for the runway for all these planes to land, including Holly's, Steve, it was running out of gas as it was approaching the runway.
2 birds in 1 stone. 2 crews. He took down 2 crews. Die Hard 2. Ooh,
that's the John McClane 2-step, Steve.
2.
He's got to get his wife on the ground so he can get to a hotel and fuck. Fuck those kids. Fuck Christmas after this because this is 2 Christmases in a row, Steve. 2 terrorist conflicts.
And even, did you say AIDS? What?
I said aced, but
okay.
Yeah, I bet he could figure out AIDS too. If you give him a couple, give him an evil scientist and an AIDS needle, he'll figure it out. I don't know.
Man, what can't do? And also like Sam Coleman, who's been thirsty for a news story this whole movie. She sees Holly embracing her husband, John McClane, and her cameraman. He's trying to get some footage, and she just says, "No, this is." What did she say?
The cameraman's like, "Oh man, that's beautiful," and she's like, "Yeah, it is," but she hides the camera. She's like, "He's putting a hand way too far down on that ass." But he's done it, Steve. It's Christmas. Everyone wins, and the bad guys, their charred remains on the runway, but everyone else is kissing and hugging and loving each other with the smell of dead bodies just frying in the background. Carl Winslow's eating a couple Twinkies in LA, just like, God damn it, McClane, you son of a bitch.
I wonder if my show's going to get renewed. I don't know about that. I don't know about that kid with the glasses. Oh, and another cherry on top, McClane gets his ticket thrown out because the cop that towed away his car was actually his brother Vito.
Yeah.
It's Christmas.
It's Christmas. But here's my thing when I saw that, Steve, you still towed the car. So where the fuck's the car at? I mean, you might not have that might have made it harder for him to even get his car out. But you know what, Steve? Him and friends, they're going to have a nice sausage and peppers in fucking Chicago, sometime.
Watch the Bears, maybe watch some Michael Jordan, the Bulls.
You guys did it. You know what? Die Hard 2, it could have been a fuck stick of a movie. It wasn't. And we
It
got
totally
it
was.
was like filled with celebrities, Steve. And I love
Yes.
that.
Like stars and future stars, man. And Planet Hollywood, man. I don't know if this was by design, but those three, you could probably say, yeah, man. You were right the other day, bro.
I
I
mean,
like that. Those are the three best.
it's hard to, especially because we grew up in that time where that was like when it happened, you know, in the late 80s and 90s. That's when all those people, they became movie stars like that. So it's hard to top them. But like I said earlier, man, don't fuck around and take Snipes out of there, or Jean Claude for that matter. Both those guys are also legends. And if you want to throw somebody else in there that I was thinking about, Jackie Chan.
Yeah, most of his like prime, his peak years were overseas. I think he was a late bloomer. You could say he's like a Yao Ming in a sense of like, yeah, he was playing overseas. Then like he came over here and was an all star. But man, you should have saw him when he was 21.
Yeah. I mean, but they started bringing his shit over here, like that movie Rumble in the Bronx. That
Yeah,
was just like one of his Asian movies that they dubbed. And I think that's how people started to sort of get to know him. And then obviously he was in like Rush Hour and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, dude, Bruce Willis, man, he's in a lot of cool shit. I'll give him that. He was in some movies, and even in the 2000s when he was starting to age a little bit. He was in this movie with Mos Def called 16 Blocks. Great thriller action movie where he's like sort of a alcoholic old cop. It's like if John McClane got old and bitter almost. And I think Bruce Willis is great, man. He's funny. He's a great action star, and he's in movies like you said, Pulp Fiction and stuff like that, where it's just like there's not a lot of people that have the resume of a Bruce Willis, and he's a legit badass. So shout out.
shout out, man. And somebody who probably didn't watch Die Hard 2 slash Die Harder in 1990 is probably Omar Gooding because he was busy hosting Wild and Crazy Kids debuting on Nickelodeon. Wow, 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 wow.
Well, wild and crazy, yeah. And Donnie Jeffcoat, let us not forget.
And Annette Chavez.
Yeah, dude. And we all wanted to be on the show. It was just like Double Dare, man. But they had a lot of outside stuff. They'd have kids like cover themselves with maple syrup and roll down a hill of popcorn. You know, it didn't make sense, but it just made you want to fucking have some fun,
And
right?
and every now and then they would have a little cameo. DJ from Roseanne, Lark Voorhees from Saved by the Bell, even Arnold. Arnold was on an episode. Oh, look at these kids. They're so crazy and wild and muscular. They're crazy.
Get in the popcorn. Roll around in the popcorn. Yeah, dude. But this was my dream to go to Universal Studios Orlando, go to the Nick Studios, and get to just do whatever crazy shit they were doing on Wild and Crazy Kids one time and meet Omar Gooding, my dog.
Omar, man, and he was there throughout the whole time. Eventually, Annette Chavez would be replaced by Jessica Gaines the following year, and she would be there from '91 until the show ended.
Boo.
Yeah, you weren't a fan of Jessica Gaines, huh?
No, but I was a fan of just the OG crew. Those three, it was the three amigos. You couldn't have it was all part of the same thing. And Donnie Jeffco was like a Wish.com Zach Morris to me, you know?
Yeah, that's how I looked at him. But Nickelodeon version. It lasted for 75 episodes, and I think for a time they brought it back. Maybe
I think that what they ought to do as a nostalgia thing is just do this for adults. Just get them,
uh,
just recreate this for adults. Wild and crazy middle-aged people with sore joints. You know, I'll do it.
agreed.
They do Tough Mudders. Just make it a Wild and Crazy Kids Tough Mudder where you just have to like slide down a slime pit and shit.
In On that same day, 1990, Skate TV debuts on Nickelodeon. And do you know who the original host was of Skate TV?
Tony Hawk, Steve? I don't know.
Well, Tony Hawk was featured in an episode of Skate TV, but the original host is one of your favorite Matthews, Matthew Lynn Lillard. At the time, he was known as Matthew Lynn.
Oh, Mr. Scream Killer himself. I love that. Shaggy?
Zoink Scoob.
He was in SLC Punk too. I think he was like heavily sort of like in that world for a while. He's like kind of a punk skater kid.
Yeah. This is one of them random things I remember. It was only 13 episodes, bro.
I remember it loosely coming out, but I was fat and I couldn't skate, so it scared me. I didn't watch it.
But you could always hope.
No, I tried. I knew it was no hope.
But
So
this was actually created and produced by the original Z Boys, Nathan Pratt and Mark Ashton Hunt. And it was directed by Stacy Peralta, who would eventually direct that documentary, Dogtown and Z Boys.
that guy's a legend. That
Yeah.
Stacy Peralta guy is right up there with Tony Hawk. That's cool. I mean, this was when it was starting to get big. You know, skating was just kind of this like subculture thing that if you knew, you knew. And it like in the '90s, it really started to blow up to like basically in the 2000s when all the video games, like those Tony Hawk games, were coming out. It was just exploding. That's what this brought basically.
And then in 1994, Prodigy releases Music for a Jilted Generation. Man, I love me some Prodigy.
See, I love Prodigy too. This is the only techno shit I can really tolerate. But I was in fully on the Fat of the Land. That was the album that I really like gravitated towards. I don't remember much off this one.
I remember buying this when I first like fully got into the Prodigy, and my favorite track on here is Voodoo People. It's a sample, like they do electronic, they do the beats, and then it just cuts back to Magic People, Voodoo People. And I want to say that's like Jimi Hendrix doing that little sample. And then they go back down, Magic People, Voodoo People.
Great music for movie trailers. That's what I always thought. Prodigy
Perfect.
always made me want to like do like film a movie trailer type music, you know, some crazy action stuff like Smack My Bitch Up and stuff like that when they got real famous and Firestarter. Great. My personal favorite Prodigy song is a song called Diesel Power because sometimes they'd throw in a little rap,
Oh yeah.
and that guy that could rap, he could
Key
fucking surprise you. He was a badass.
Yeah, and this is when they first started rapping on Fat of the Land, I believe, man. I think when they did Music for a Jilted Generation, they were more influenced or involved with just the electronic part, the beats part, the
Yeah.
production. Whereas, like when Fat of the Land came out, that's when they started adding like these quotable lines: "Change my pitch up, smack my bitch up."
Bow, ba bow, ba bow. That and also that video was crazy as fuck too. It was like a kind of a groundbreaking video that they did. So yeah, dude, Prodigy, they're a notable band of the '90s, especially in techno and or whatever you want, electronica or whatever you want to call it. Where
All of it.
to me, the vast majority of that music, I don't care for. I just don't get it. It's not my thing. But this, I'm fully into.
But somebody who probably didn't listen to the Prodigy's Music for a Jilted Generation in 1994 is probably American wrestling referee Joey Marella, son of Gorilla Monsoon. He would die in a car crash at the age of 31.
Damn.
Yeah. Fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into a guardrail and a tree while driving home on the New Jersey Turnpike after a night of refereeing WWF matches in Ocean City, Maryland.
Ouch, that stinks. I've never even really knew this guy, but this guy was a famous ref. You said?
Yeah, you've seen matches with him in it because like even some of the pay-per-views that we cover, like King of the Ring, he was one of the refs in some of those matches, man.
Hmm.
And
Damn,
like
tragic.
yeah,
Yet another tragic death of a wrestling person. How many? Like this has to be the attrition rate of wrestling has to be the highest percentage in anything.
even if you're not a wrestler, just being involved in the industry, like just it's not safe. It's like wrestling industry and rap industry. Who dies more?
Yeah, I mean, just feel like the percentage has got to be higher in wrestling, especially for when we like our generation of wrestlers.
Yeah, man. And this is Gorilla Son. Like no, it's every parent's nightmare to have their son or daughter die before them. So that really hit him. And it was around this time that Gorilla started to take more of a back seat. He just it was too much for him.
Yeah, that's understandable. That's crazy. Especially if it's like
R.I.P.
off the job. You know, it's like he
Yeah.
basically did it after he was like working for him. So it's nuts.
But 1995, the Foo Fighters released their debut album, self-titled Foo Fighters, and this is the one with "I don't know anything. I'll stick around. I'll stick around."
And there's a lot of backstory about this that I wasn't really aware of until I got on the wiki about how he had to like make up a name for this band, and like nobody knew he was involved in it when he was passing around the demo tape and stuff like that. Like he would just pass around, and be like, "Yeah, it's a crazy band," and it's obviously, thank God. He
Yeah.
thought he's like he was already in one of the greatest bands of the '90s, and then to follow that up with this is just shows you how much of a talented dude he is. And I think he did it all himself when he made those like the initial album. And then he got musicians to play the music.
What a genius, man. I mean, you could probably say he's one of the best like chameleons of rock, if not the best, man. Like, Nirvana, when you're in a big rock band, some people make that their retirement plan. Like, oh, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket, and then when it crumbles, i.e., your front man shoots himself. Like, oh, like, well, fuck. I'm just this guy. He was staying at it, man. Dave Grohl, not enough props has been given.
And he has what I like about Dave Grohl too is he's a legend. He's done all these things. He's obviously like a musical genius. Sense of humor. He was like the drummer for Tenacious D.
Yep.
He'll do like comedy stuff. He's a very like creative, and he has like a fun sense of humor about himself too, which is kind of odd for a celeb. Some people take themselves too seriously, you know.
And this was a change of pace from Nirvana, man, because they were like dark and grungy, and like their videos were kind of like just kind of out there. But where this one with Foo Fighters, man, this was the album where they did the Mentos parody for Big
Yeah,
Me.
yeah, hell yeah. And that's what you kind of saw, that sense of humor a little bit, like
Yeah,
just that creativity on that side too. So, yeah, I think it's hard enough to step out of the shadows of a gigantic band like Nirvana. And then he just basically was like, that didn't work out, but watch what I can do, and created this whole new genius thing that's still, I mean, it keeps losing people and it's still going. Like it just keeps going and going because I mean, he's never going to stop writing music and he's great at it.
I can do more than drum, mama. And on that same day in 1995, D'Angelo releases his debut album, Brown Sugar Babe. Oh, oh, I
He's not naked yet, but he's
yeah.
going to get there. I was never
Man.
a D'Angelo guy, Steve. This is too heavy. This is too much. This is too soft for me. I can't get into D'Angelo as much as some others,
Oh,
you
it's
know?
so smooth, man. I thought you liked the smooth. If you like, look, Ronald Isley walked so the D'Angelos could sprint. God damn it! How could you not like?
I think I was just turned off as a fat white kid seeing that yoked black dude just make every woman just moist in the pants. I was like, I'm never gonna be that. I can't sing this song.
But look at you now. You're a vanilla version of that. Look at
I
this
mean,
man. Look at look. Would you look in the mirror and just remind yourself how handsome you are, Matt?
give me some strong overhead lighting. I mean, we can recreate the video, honestly, Steve. Give me like 2 more months. I'll be good to go. But I'm just saying that's probably where just my lack of D'Angelo knowledge came from. Just like his resentment. I was a hater, you
You were a
know?
hater. All right, man. Knowing is half the battle. But cruising. You're not even cruising.
I'm not even cruising, Steve. Not even on a Sunday afternoon. I'm not. Cruising, the only cruising I know is a weird movie Al Pacino was in back in the '70s, and that's crazy. So
I love it when we're cruising together. Cruising is made for love. Cruising is made for us. I love you are a hate. Put a capital H on his head. God, I can't believe this right now. But also in 1995, Funk Dubious releases Brothers Doobie, and Pussy Ain't Shit is one of my favorite tracks on this album. Pussy Ain't Shit, Triple X Funk, and Super Hoes.
there was one night because I listened to this while I was working out today. Dedicated. I didn't know who this was. I've seen Funk Dubious, like I've seen that like someplace, maybe on a poster. But to be honest with you, I thought this was like gonna be like a Bootsy Collins type shit, like some weird like best of or something. But this is dope. That movie or that song dedicated. I'm pretty sure that was in a movie. I like soundtrack. but that's a banger, and I definitely am into this band.
It is, man. And like the whole album, I loved. I never really listened to Funk Dubious growing up, but like they're from LA. There's actually Super Hose that was a part of the Friday soundtrack as well, man.
That might be what I know that because it's like a distinctive sound for sure. So I definitely have heard them, but yeah, I was not on the Funk Dubious bandwagon. But shame on me because it's awesome.
Yeah, Dedicated, that is a dope one. And the track before that, Lost in Thought. You know what? I think I might have added just about every track from this album on my playlist, man. I get more of a Far Side feel.
Yeah, it's not it's not like LA gangster rap or anything like
No,
that.
not at all.
It's got some awesome beats, good lyricism. It's not that. It's just some good ass music. I guess the Far Side is probably the best comparison, but check it out because I to me this is something I thought I like listening to it. I should have known about this in the 90s. This was right up my alley. I just somehow missed it.
Yeah, both of us did, man. But somebody who probably didn't buy Funk Dubious in 1995 is probably American rapper, singer, songwriter, record producer, and future culture vulture, Post Malone. Born in Syracuse, New York in 1995. I think he graduated from the School of Kid Rock.
Yeah, for sure.
Just in no time, he's already doing the banjo playing in the country tunes. Before you know it, he'll be in the QAnon.
See, I mean, him, Uncle Cracker, Kid Rock, they should just form some kind of like alt right super group at this point and just go
Uh,
for it.
we don't need you blacks anymore. We put a rules over them. But just like the good Lord giveth, the good Lord taketh, because also in 1995, July 4th, Hungarian American actress and singer Eva Gabor passes away at the age of 76.
Eva. That's not Jaja.
Not Zsa Zsa, but damn it, they were both some baddies. And Eva is the one that was on Green Acres is the place to be. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
I wouldn't mind getting on some Green Acres with Eva, though. She was sexy back in the day.
I'm talking big fine, Matt. Big fine.
Mm. But rest in peace, Eva.
And somebody probably didn't know about any of this. It's probably American painter and television host Bob Ross because he would die on July 4th, 1990.
Damn.
Yeah. And yeah,
I don't want to
man.
react more to that than Eva Gabor, but that's a loss, Steve. I feel like Bob Ross was, I don't know, he filled a hole for a lot of people. I love Bob Ross for whatever reason. He's just like a calm, soothing presence, you
He was
know?
one of those guys that raised us 90s kids, man. You know, you had Bob Ross, you had Mr. Rogers, LeVar Burton, you know, and Bob Ross, man, like his story is sad. I don't know if you ever watched the documentary on Netflix, but there's this couple called the Kowalskis, and they were friends. That's I think how they started off as friends with Bob Ross. Then they became business partners, and they screwed him out of his estate in his dying days on the deathbed, and he wrote him out of their will. But because they had some great lawyers, they said that he was doing a uh, they had it hooked up some way to where you can't make that move. You can't write us out of your state. So basically, they basically own everything. And the remaining half that the son and the brother still had, the wife talked them out of that.
Damn.
So if it
Oh, kind soul like Bob Ross.
of,
That's a
of,
tragedy.
of all people, because he was a badass man. He was an awesome dude. He fought in Nam, and like he was like a lieutenant. This calm guy. He was like a lieutenant in Nam. And what really sucks about it, man, if you're a fan of Bob Ross and you want to like buy some of his memorabilia or anything that's like that has his likeness or name on it, man, it doesn't go to his estate. It's going to a horrible human being. That's what
That's
really sucks about that.
bullshit.
Like, I would love to have some Bob Ross stuff, like just for design or have even a pops figure. They might be eating off of that, man.
They'll get theirs, dude.
Yeah. Karma spins
Bob,
the block.
when they're in hell, Bob Ross will be up there painting their picture like, paint some nice little cute flames next to you.
I'll paint them hanging from a pretty little tree.
That sucks, dude. But Bob Ross, legend. And I've, could never do what he did, but just watching that guy paint, man, it was just amazing. This guy just calmly running you through these steps. And by an hour in, he's got a painting that could be on anybody's wall. It was beautiful. It was fantastic.
And then you think he's messing up what he just did. It's like, dude, why you just what do you do? Oh, never
Yeah,
mind.
I know, right? You're like, man, what is that? That's a big black line. What do you? Oh, that's a
Oh,
tree, and nice.
you
And
know what
it
you're doing.
somehow it looks like a photograph.
Yeah.
It's just like he had this insane. Some people are like that, dude. Like our buddy Jordan. It was just
Yeah.
artistic people, and what I liked about him was he had the ability to teach while he was doing these things, and that
Yeah.
show, if you had the materials, you could follow along and like try to do that and
You
probably
try.
become pretty good. Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of people tried that, but I'm just saying, like,
Still, yeah.
very few people that would produce an hour long show I don't know if it was every week, but it was just like so many
Yeah.
episodes of this guy just like being a great teacher and just putting out some like awesome shit where, like you said, at the beginning you're like, this is gonna be some straight trash, and at the end you're like, holy shit, holy crap, dude, that's awesome.
For real, man. And it was educational, bro. Like he did this for the love of the art, man. He wanted to teach people. He even had different classes, man. You could see in the documentary, he's teaching kids, he was teaching adults. And doing this on public access, I don't know, they probably weren't getting paid much, man. But like I said, he wasn't there for that. But unfortunately, he was dealing with some people who were solely in it for that.
That's Hollywood, dude. That's crazy as fuck. But you know what, Bob Ross, he's laughing, dude. That's what I'm telling you. This guy's somewhere just like living the good life in heaven, Steve. I only hope so. That afro's
Yeah.
just up there, just clean,
Yeah.
fantastic.
And pristine and angelic. But any callbacks, honorable mentions, or canker sores?
Just another quick shout out to Wesley Snipes. Wesley, I omitted you in a list. It's by no means a takedown of you or just an insult to you. You're a badass. And you might be as badass as Michael Jai White. I can't tell you. And I honestly, Steve, sitting here right now, he might go to number 4 and Jean Claude move down to number 5. And we
Uh,
pushed Michael Jai out because I feel like Michael Jai White had more success later after the 90s that I'm more in love with. You know what I
if we're,
mean?
if we're talking just 90s, then yeah, he would probably have to get pushed out of the 5.
Yeah, I mean,
But we
but
still
still,
have him.
we
Yeah.
have to acknowledge greatness when we can. So to Wesley Snipes, you're a legend, and I am so sorry, Nino. I apologize. So,
Rockabye, baby.
how about you, Steve?
Man, I shame on me for just not mentioning this before, but R.I.P. to Donald Sutherland, man, another legend. That's Kiefer's dad. Uh, you know, a lot of people remember him for several things, but my first go to is always A Time to Kill. That's one of my favorite movies from the 90s. He didn't have that big of a role, man, but everybody just killed it, no pun intended, in that role. So RIP to him. RIP to Bill Cobbs, who passed away over the week. Bill Cobbs, he's a legendary guy from Cleveland, Ohio. And the thing I always remember about Bill Cobbs is he's the guy who shot Nino Brown. Speaking of the devil, man, he's the guy who killed Nino Brown at the end of New Jack City, man. RIP to him, as well as Martin Mull, who we just lost yesterday. Um,
What?
Martin Mull, yeah, he was the gay guy on Roseanne. A lot of people remember him for that. He was in a lot of things. I initially remember him from being on Fernwood Tonight. He was the host on Nick at Night back in the day. It was a '70s show, and then like a lot of things around that time, they brought it back on Nick at Night, and it reintroduced that show to a younger generation, my generation. I would watch that with my granny, and yeah. So R.I.P. to all those legends, man. But please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Please tell your sister, yippee ki yay, motherfucker. Please check out Food Show Fanatics. as well as our guy Clark the Shark on Podcastle. This is Steve G and Matt G with
Happened in the 90s.
Matt was the fat kid, Steve was the flat kid. Life wasn't always great, but you know what was? The 90s. Happened in the 90s. Yeah!
God damn it, McClane.